Hi, everyone. We're just going to get started in a few minutes, allow others to join tonight. Hope you're all having a good evening, and just sit tight for a moment. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this evening. We'll just give it a few more minutes to let others join. So hang tight and we'll be right with you. Thanks. Okay, everyone. Hi, welcome to our webinar on paths to student debt cancellation. Thanks for joining tonight. My name is Amy Salata. I am the Outreach and Advocacy Manager at the Student Borrower Protection Center. And just a little bit of background on the Student Borrower Protection Center. We're a national nonprofit policy organization focused solely on alleviating the burden of student debt in the country. And we do this through a mixture of advocacy, policymaking, and litigation strategy to rein in industry abuses, protect borrowers' rights, and advance economic opportunity for the next generation of students. I'm really excited to speak with you all today. One note about questions. So if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to put them in the Q&A feature. There's also a chat button, and it only goes to me, but it's a little bit easier to tell what questions you have if you put them in the Q&A. That would be really helpful. And so then we'll leave plenty of time for questions at the end of the presentation. And with that, let's get started. So we're going to spend the next hour laying out different options for student debt cancellation. These include updates to the cancellation proposal that President Biden announced last August, the income-driven repayment account adjustment, or the IDR account adjustment as it's known, and public service loan forgiveness, or PSLF. We'll also have plenty of time for Q&A, as I mentioned, so I'll answer them as best I can at the end of the presentation. So now, this past August, in recognition of some of the harmful economic impacts of the student debt crisis, President Biden announced a broad-based student debt relief plan for federal loan borrowers who meet certain income requirements. So the plan would provide up to $20,000 in debt cancellation for borrowers who had previously received a Pell Grant at any point in their educational career, and also that they meet certain income requirements. The plan would also cancel up to $10,000 for borrowers who did not receive a Pell Grant, but meet certain income requirements. To be eligible, those income requirements are that a person must have earned under $125,000 as an individual, or $250,000 as a married couple or head of household in either the 2020 or 2021 tax year. For the majority of borrowers, an application process will be required, and as it was originally announced, the borrowers will have until December 31st of 2023 to apply. For borrowers who have already shared income information with the Department of Education, maybe through enrollment in an income-driven repayment plan, they may be eligible for cancellation on an automatic basis. And as part of this announcement, The administration also extended the deadline through December 31st of last year and announced a newly proposed income-driven repayment plan that will drastically lower payments for most borrowers. We're not going to get into the IDR plan too much today, but we definitely have information on that we can share at a later date. And of course, this was the original announcement as it was made up. You all know that the payment pause has been extended, through August or September of 2023 now. Okay. So this debt relief plan was a historic and exciting opportunity for folks, so much so that 26 million people applied in the past few months, and 16 million borrowers already are approved for cancellation, and they're just waiting in a queue. And as you may already know, a federal judge in Texas and a panel of judges in Missouri blocked President Biden's student debt relief plan in mid-November of last year. And while the Department of Justice is appealing the decision, and you know that the oral arguments already happened for these cases on the 28th of February, the Department of Education is no longer accepting applications. So although the debt relief program is blocked for now, we're confident that the Biden administration will find a way to get debt relief across the finish line. So what's next? Here's a list of things that you can do based on whether or not you've applied already. If you have already applied, you should have received a confirmation email, so check to make sure that you received that. The department will keep applications on file as this continues to move through the courts. So unless you hear from the Department of Education requesting further information, you don't need to do anything further right now. You could make sure that your contact information is up to date with the Department of Education and with your servicer, and all approved applicants will be notified via email. You can stay up to date with the Department of Education at ed.gov/subscriptions. And if you haven't applied yet, you can also sign up for those updates from ed at ed.gov/subscriptions. And you can also make sure that you have qualifying loans and find out if you've ever received a Pell Grant to pay for your education, which will determine whether you're eligible for that $10,000 or $20,000 of relief. So now let's turn to the loans that are eligible for broad-based cancellation. As you'll remember, borrowers must earn below a certain income, and they also must have qualifying federal loans held by the Department of Education in order to be eligible for relief. These include all federal direct loans. So these are subsidized or unsubsidized federal loans, Parent Plus loans. These loans are the loans that parents take out to help their children attend college. Graduate Plus loans, so loans that you take out for a graduate education, and then also direct consolidation loans. Other loans held by the Department of Education are also eligible, specifically FFEL loans that are held by the Department of Education, and then Perkins loans that are held by the department. Additional loans include all defaulted loans held by ed or commercially serviced, including defaulted subsidized Stafford loans or unsubsidized Stafford loans, defaulted Parent Plus loans or Graduate Plus loans, defaulted ed-held Perkins loans. A helpful tip to determine whether or not your loans qualify: if you had loans that were paused over the course of the payment pause due to the pandemic, your loans are eligible for this cancellation program. Now, as you can see from the red text at the bottom of the screen, as of September 29th of last year, the administration announced that any privately owned FFEL or Perkins loans, which are not held by the Department of Education, are not eligible for relief under this broad-based cancellation program. So any borrower who consolidated their commercially held FFEL or Perkins loans prior to September 29th of last year, you're fine, but any new consolidations won't be eligible for this debt relief program. So some of you might be thinking, how do I even tell what type of loan I have? So don't worry, we have an entire slide dedicated to this, and we're happy to discuss any questions at the end as well. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, FFELP loans that are held by the Department of Education are eligible for student debt relief. If you have a commercially held FFELP loan, that will not be eligible for this cancellation or debt relief plan. One way to tell is that commercially held FFELP loans have not been receiving the payment pause, and those that are held by the Department of Education have been receiving it. Another way to find out is to log into studentaid.gov and view your dashboard. So once you're there, you'll be able to see if your loan is held by a private lender, such as a bank, or if the lender is listed as the Department of Education. Finding out this information will enable you to tell if you're eligible for this debt relief plan that was announced in August. And on the screen, you can see kind of the printout from someone's dashboard, and on the second blue box, it says that Wells Fargo Bank is the the servicer or the owner of those loans, and so they're owned by the private lender. And then in the last box, you can see that it says the Department of Education services their loan. So that would be an example of an ed-held FFEL loan. Now, in response to the court's blocking of student debt relief, we're calling on the president to cancel student debt using all available legal tools. And as we mentioned, the president still has the authority to cancel student debt. You can send a letter to the president calling on him to cancel student debt at our Action Network page listed here. And this will also be sent in a follow-up email tomorrow, along with a recording of this presentation. So now we'll shift gears to talk about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which is another way to get your debt canceled. And the Department of Education has relaxed some of the requirements of this program, so you may be able to benefit from some of these relaxed requirements. So first, let's talk about how the program was created. So Congress created the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program in 2007 to help public service workers who are struggling with their student loan debt and to make sure that future students and graduates wouldn't be deterred from entering the public service because of their student loan balances. But to put it simply, PSLF is the promise that if a borrower works in public service and makes payments on those loans for 10 years, the remainder of their debts will be forgiven. Typically, there are normally 4 specific criteria for the program. First, you need to have a direct loan. That's one of several federal loan types. If you have a FFELP or Perkins loan, you are able to consolidate those loans into direct loans to make them eligible for PSLF. Second, you need to be in the correct repayment plan, which for the program is generally an income-driven repayment plan. Third, you need to work full-time in public service, which could be at a local, state, federal, or tribal government. It could be at a 501c3 nonprofit, or at certain nonprofits, depending on the work that they do. Finally, you need to make 120 qualifying payments or 10 years worth of payments on your loans while meeting all the other requirements as well. So there have been some impacts of COVID on the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. The most relevant is that for those loans that are getting the payment pause, those that are owned by the federal government, each month of suspended payments counts towards PSLF loan forgiveness towards the 120 total credits that you need. However, you still need to meet each of the other criteria, and the most relevant criteria is the public service employer. So there are certain requirements that the Department of Education has waived for a limited time, and I'm going to review those now. Essentially, with the relaxation of some of these requirements is that it gives public service workers credit towards loan forgiveness, regardless of what type of federal student loan they have, for any period of time that they've worked in public service since October 1st, 2007, when the program began, and as long as they were in qualifying public service employment, and that their loan was not in default, deferment, or forbearance. So even for months in which borrowers didn't actively make a payment, as long as their loan was in repayment status, they can receive credit for that time. These credits are retroactive, so borrowers can receive past credit or credit for past payments that were previously ineligible for PSLF. So in short, for any month since October 1st, 2007, that a borrower had any type of federal loan, worked for a qualifying public service employer, and wasn't in default, deferment, or forbearance, that borrower can receive credit towards the 120 months required for loan forgiveness under PSLF. In a little bit, I'll also talk about a way that some borrowers might be able to get some credit for time spent in deferment and forbearance to count for PSLF as well. One thing to note is that these benefits are not completely automatic. Normally, PSLF requires that borrowers have a specific loan type, direct loans, as I mentioned. And although this period of time allows borrowers with any loan type to get credit, those without direct loans must take some steps to convert their loans into direct loans through a process called consolidation. And for almost all borrowers, regardless of loan types, you'll have to certify with the Department of Education any periods of qualifying public service work since October 1st, 2007. So those are the steps that you would need to take in order to achieve PSLF through these relaxed requirements. Importantly, borrowers who need to consolidate their loans into direct loans must do so before May 1st of 2023. That's coming up in a few months. And if you haven't done so already, borrowers should submit PSLF forms for all their qualifying work that they have had since October 1st, 2007. But this can be completed at any time. The importance of the deadline is really for those that need to consolidate. If you're interested in the PSLF program and want more information, we have a great website called cancellmystudentdebt.org. And I'll be sharing that as a follow-up resource, and I'll mention it again at the end. But if you need more information, we have a great section of FAQs on PSLF there as well. Okay, so now we'll talk about another option for having your student debt canceled, and that is income-driven repayment plans. So under the law, income-driven repayment entitles borrowers to a range of plans that set their monthly income, that set their monthly payment as an affordable % of their income and offer cancellation after 20 or 25 years of repayment based on your situation. However, a well-documented history shows that student loan servicers regularly steer borrowers away from these plans and have widely failed to track borrowers' progress towards the promised cancellation through these plans. So in April of last year, the Department of Education announced a one-time account adjustment, which is meant to address these historical breakdowns. So for public service workers with student debt, this initiative mirrors the same benefits and protections that have delivered debt relief to public service workers across the country. These benefits include credit towards both PSLF and debt cancellation under income-driven repayment in a few circumstances. How does this IDR account adjustment actually work? This waiver provides a pathway to debt cancellation via consolidation for borrowers with older federally guaranteed student loans, also known as Federal Family Education Loans or FFELP loans. It also offers credit towards debt cancellation for any monthly payments made, regardless of what type of payment plan you were on, and regardless of whether it was made on time, in advance, or late. It also offers credit towards debt cancellation for any member of the military for any period of active duty military service, including during periods of forbearance and deferment. And in addition to providing borrowers working in public service with the opportunity to gain credit towards PSLF through this, the IDR account adjustment also offers all borrowers, including public service workers, an additional set of protections. That is credit towards debt cancellation for extended periods of forbearance and deferment. So essentially, if you've had up to 12 consecutive months of forbearance or over 36 cumulative months of forbearance, those will count. And then any deferment that happened prior to the year 2013, excluding in-school deferment. So if you were in school and you had your loans deferred because you have in-school deferment, those won't count, but any other deferment that happened prior to the year 2013 will count. And then you can also get any credit towards debt cancellation for any borrowers who were steered into forbearance due to misrepresentations by a student loan company. And in order to demonstrate that you were steered into forbearance, you would need to file a complaint with the Federal Student Aid Ombudsperson. And I'll be sending out that link tomorrow as well. So how do you take part in the IDR account adjustment? So for most borrowers, the adjustment will be automatic. However, if you have loans that are not currently held by the Department of Education, such as those commercially held FFELP loans or Perkins loans, they'll need to be consolidated before May 1st in order to have the adjustment applied to your account. And the timeline for this account adjustment to happen, well, the Department of Education announced that it would begin adjusting accounts in November for those that were closest to the 20 or 25 years of cancellation, or those who were at the 20 or 25 years of cancellation. That hasn't started yet. That was the original announcement. And then the Department of Education stated that they would be doing the audits for everyone else in July of this year. So it's possible that that timeline might be a bit slower than what we originally anticipated. But to give you a sense, the people that are closest to those 20 or 25 years of credit so that they can get, full cancellation, those accounts will be adjusted first. And then after that, everyone else's accounts will be adjusted. Okay, so there also have been some recent developments related to the IDR account adjustment. The Department of Education had previously announced that while Parent Plus borrowers would be included in the IDR account adjustment, the adjusted time would not count towards PSLF. But thanks to a lot of hardworking advocates, the Department of Education has reversed this policy. So this means that in addition to receiving credit for past time that was previously ineligible for IDR, Parent Plus borrowers can also receive credit for past public service under PSLF. So the main action item that Parent Plus borrowers need to take is to submit PSLF forms for all their previous public service work since October 1st, 2007. However, in order to achieve forgiveness through PSLF, all borrowers seeking PSLF need to be enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan to achieve forgiveness. So this means that if you don't already have 10 years of public service work in your employment history, you'll need to consolidate your loans in order to access the income-driven repayment plans to get on one before you can have your debt canceled if you are a Parent Plus borrower seeking PSLF. I'm happy to answer more questions about that at the end as well. Okay, once more, I just want to mention here that there was that recent change, which is not so recent anymore, back in September of 2022 from President Biden. So as of September 29th, 2022, borrowers with commercial FFEL or Perkins loans held by an institution are no longer eligible for cancellation under the debt relief plan announced in August. All borrowers who consolidated before September 29th don't need to worry about this. But if you have a mixture of loans that received the payment pause and some that did not receive the payment pause, consolidating all of those loans together could affect your eligibility for the cancellation of 10K or 20K under the announcement from August. There's a lot up in the air right now, especially with debt relief, the debt relief plan held up in the Supreme Court. But we want to mention this here because if and when the application becomes live again, you should understand that consolidating all of these loans together could make you ineligible for the debt relief plan. So thinking through your best options for debt cancellation, you might have to consider how long you've been in repayment and how much debt you have in order to make an informed decision about the best option for you personally. So now let's review how to check what type of loans you have. This can be really confusing. Many folks don't necessarily know. So to see all of your loans, you should log into your online account at studentaid.gov. One way is to go to the dashboard at View Details, and then you can also download your aid data for a more granular list of the loans that you have. But the dashboard, when you get there, will essentially look like this. So you can see the different types of loans that this person has. Right now, they have just 2 consolidation loans, and they're both of them under this, heading say that they're direct loans. So they've already consolidated their loans, and they're already direct loans. However, underneath that, that first box, you can see the different type of loans that they used to have, like Graduate Plus loans, Perkins loans, and they all have a $0 balance. So you don't need to worry about the ones with a $0 balance because you're only concerned about the ones that you want to get canceled, right? And so you just need to worry about the ones with a balance. But this is what the dashboard essentially looks like. And then certainly if you wanted a more granular list, you can download that, your aid data from the previous slide here by going from download my aid data. Now, if you have either non-direct loans and you're seeking PSLF, or if you have FFEL loans and you're trying to get the IDR account adjustment to apply to you, you'll need to consolidate your loans. So let's go over that. So to consolidate your loans, you'll log into studentaid.gov again, hover over Manage Loans in the top toolbar, and then click on Consolidate My Loans in the drop-down menu. And you can access the consolidation application here. And then it'll guide you through the next steps that you need to take, which include selecting the loans that you want to include in the consolidation, confirming the amount and interest rate of the new loan, selecting your payment plan and your servicer, and then signing for the loan. Now here's a tip specific to right now, while these relaxed requirements are in place, especially for PSLF. If you have a mix of older and newer loans, so some that would be closer to the 10 years needed for forgiveness under PSLF, if you consolidate all of those loans together, the new loan will be granted as much credit towards forgiveness as your oldest existing loan. So if you consolidate old and new loans, then the consolidated loan is ultimately forgiven. The entire amount of that loan will be forgiven. This is really useful for folks who have older FFEL loans, but also newer direct loans. You might not think to consolidate your direct loans because they technically already qualify for something like PSLF. But if you do consolidate them, they'll all be on the same timeline as your oldest existing loan. And this is true too if you have different direct loans from different periods of time. If you consolidated them all together, they'd all be on the same timeline. Now remember that for the regular PSLF program, you need to be enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan. So when you're consolidating, it's a good idea to select one of those IDR plans as your payment plan. Some of the names for these include income-based repayment, or IBR, income contingent repayment, or ICR, pay, which is PAYE, and then repay, which is REPAYE. These payment plans within income-driven repayment are all different, and there is a payment calculator tool that can help you choose the best among these four. That's the best for you. Okay, so before we review some important takeaways from today's presentation and get to your questions, I just want to plug our website that I mentioned, cancelmystudentdebt.org. This is a website that we built with some of our partners that features step-by-step guides, recordings from previous webinars, and lists of FAQs on the debt relief plan that we went over tonight, IDR account adjustment, and then PSLF as well. So please check it out. This will also be sent in a follow-up email tomorrow. Okay, so let's go over some important takeaways and then get to your questions. In thinking about how to cancel your student debt, remember to check or review all of your options, especially ones that we mentioned on this call tonight. So first, the debt relief plan announced by President Biden in August, public service loan forgiveness, and then also income-driven repayment, and particularly the IDR account adjustment. In order to figure out your best case scenario, determine what type of loans you have. Remember that if you have non-direct loans, you'll need to consolidate your loans for PSLF. And if you have commercially held FFELP loans, you'll have to consolidate those as well by May 1st in order to take advantage of the IDR account adjustment that's happening this year. Certainly, if you experience any issues, please file complaints. These are really useful in building policy for the future. And so you can complain to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. You can complain to the Federal Student Aid Ombudsperson. And then also some states have ombudspersons at the state level, and we keep a list of those on our website that I'll also share out tomorrow. So feel free to complain to your state ombudsperson as well. And then finally, beware of scams. As you can tell from this presentation, there's a lot changing in the student loan regime right now, and there's a lot of people looking to take advantage of that. And so just make sure you're always getting your information from a trusted source like the Department of Education or our Cancel My Student Debt website. So just something to keep in mind moving forward. Okay, so let's get to your questions. Thank you so much for your attention. I know that this was a lot of information for a Monday evening. Okay, let's see. All right, just looking at. All right. We have one question here. When do you need to consolidate your loans? So right now, because of the IDR account adjustment, consolidating your loans before May 1st offers you a lot of benefits, particularly that your loans will be able to be a part of the IDR account adjustment, and you'll get that time that I mentioned, that time in forbearance if you had any, for up to 12 months of forbearance, or over 36 cumulative months of forbearance, or any time in deferment prior to the year 2013. And so applying or consolidating by May 1st has a lot of benefits, but certainly you can consolidate other times in your educational career as well. Okay. There's one question here. What's the best way to get personalized help with your student loans? This is a good question. So I think that if your state has an ombudsperson at the state level, they would be a good person to reach out to. In addition, a lot of legal aids have debt clinics or, kind of pockets of their organizations devoted solely to student debt relief and how to access it. In addition, I mentioned our research that we have. I know it's not a physical person that you can talk to, but it does have a lot of FAQs that often apply to a lot of people. So that might be a place to start. But so yeah, I would, and in addition, there's some other resources, like if you live in New York State, there's EdCap, which does individual kind of counseling on this. Those are, I think, like the best options, but certainly understand that it's frustrating that there's a lack of options. Okay, there's another question here. Do you have a tool for determining if taking advantage of consolidating or the debt forgiveness would be better for you personally? Okay, so this is a good question. So I think that this depends on your personal situation, right? If you have commercially held FFEL loans and also direct loans, and you have been, in repayment for a long time, and you're a public service employer, then it might be best to consolidate your loans and try to get your debt forgiven through PSLF. But if your PSLF isn't an option, and perhaps getting some of your debt canceled is an option. So it really depends on the person. And again, it's going to matter. I think the things to consider are the amount of the loan that you currently have and how long you've been in repayment. And then really, if you are able to achieve PSLF or seek PSLF because you're a public service worker, that might also help you determine that. But there are some resources that I can also share with you tomorrow on just kind of the benefits and the pros and cons to consolidation. So I'll remember to include that in the email as well. But it will come down to a personal decision. Okay, what if I have two direct loans that were originally federally owned and were sold? They did not qualify for automatic deferment and are not currently in the IDR program. Will these qualify for the one-time adjustment if I enroll in an IDR program? Okay. So if they were sold and they're commercially owned right now, they will not count for the debt relief plan announced in August. Will these qualify for the one-time adjustment if I enroll in an IDR program? Yes. So they won't qualify for the debt relief plan announced in August, but they will qualify for the income-driven repayment plan, or the income-driven repayment program, and then also the IDR account adjustment. So if this applies to you, if you have those commercially held FFEL loans, you are able to consolidate those loans by May 1st and then get them counted in the one-time account adjustment. And then you could subsequently enroll in an IDR plan at that time. Okay. If my loan is paid off before PSLF, does that mean that I don't have anything canceled through PSLF? Come back to me. Okay. So if your loan is paid off before PSLF, okay. So essentially, if you make more payments than if you overpay through PSLF, essentially you'll get a refund for anything that is, you know what, actually, hold on, I don't want to say this because I'm pretty sure this was something that existed something that existed during the PSLF waiver, is that if you overpaid on your loans, you got a waiver, or I'm sorry, if you overpaid on your loans, you got a refund for any overpayments that were made on a direct loan. I believe that this has changed recently when the PSLF waiver ended in October. And so I don't think that you will get a refund for anything that you've overpaid on PSLF if you are seeking PSLF. I can also follow up on this question for sure. Okay, someone else has a question here about IDR plans. How are they calculated? So this depends on the plan. As I mentioned, there are 4 different plans, and each of those is different. And so there are, some plans that include your spouse's income. There are some plans that don't, and it depends on whether you file your taxes jointly or separately. And then the discretionary income is also different for each of those plans. So I can make sure to share another resource tomorrow that includes the amount of each, or what that looks like based on the plan. And so another helpful thing is that when you're consolidating, there is a repayment calculator tool that will help you estimate your payment per month based on your situation. And so you could see essentially what your estimated monthly payment would be through the different IDR plans. That's a good question. Okay. Let me see if any other questions over here. Okay, I have a question. Can you apply for both the debt relief plan by President Biden and also for the PSLF at the same time? Yes, these are two separate plans or programs, and so you absolutely can apply for both. So you can, if and when the application becomes live again, you can apply for President Biden's debt relief plan, and then also start getting your paperwork in for PSLF. Consolidate your loans if you need to. Just be aware that if you have those commercially held FFELP loans, that those will not be eligible for President Biden's debt relief plan. Okay. And so again, we're getting another question about consolidation for the income-driven repayment plans and the IDR account adjustment. So people who need to consolidate in order to take advantage of the IDR account adjustment are people who have non-Department of Education FFEL loans. And so if you have one of these FFEL loans and it's not held by the Department of Education, that's when you would need to consolidate your loans by May 1st in order to take advantage of it. Okay, we have another question. How do you apply for PSLF? I would encourage, if you are seeking PSLF, to check out our website, cancelmystudentdebt.org. It has a step-by-step guide, and then it also has a lot of FAQs. And so if you're, submitting your PSLF paperwork for the first time, I would check that out, and I can share that tomorrow in a follow-up email as well. But that would probably give you a lot of information. Okay, this is a great question. I have another question. I have only worked for the federal government for 1 year. Will I be able to apply for PSLF? Yes. So with PSLF, in theory, your loans get forgiven after 10 years of working in public service and also meeting the other requirements that I mentioned. But if you've only been working for the federal government for 1 year, you're absolutely able to submit your PSLF form to make sure that you've raised your hand to tell the federal government, yes, I'm interested in PSLF. Please, put me on the list, make sure that that I'm interested in it. We actually recommend that if you are working towards PSLF, that you submit forms every year that you're working in public service, and then also that you submit forms every time you switch jobs. And you don't have to do this. Again, you could document everything after 10 years, but the PSLF program has historically been grossly mismanaged. And so if you submit your paperwork once a year, this is a great way to catch any mistakes that are made throughout the process, and then deal with them in real time. So yes, if you've only worked for the federal government for a year, make sure that you have those direct loans, consolidate your loans if you need to, and then submit your PSLF forms, or your one PSLF form for the time that you've worked in the federal government. And again, check out cancelmystudentdebt.org to see if any of that will be of interest to you or useful for you. I think that there's a lot of FAQs. Okay. Looking for any new questions, and just as a caveat, I can answer general program questions. If they're specific to your situation, I'm not able to answer that. We can't give any unauthorized legal advice, but if they're general program questions, I can answer them. Okay, I don't see any questions at the moment. So thank you again for joining tonight. Oh wait, hold on, let's see. Thanks again for joining tonight. I will be sending out a lot of resources tomorrow, including the extra ones that I mentioned. And feel free to reach out if you have any more questions. Thanks again for joining. I hope this was useful for you all. I hope you enjoy your Monday evening, and have a great evening. Okay, bye everyone.